chapter 5. And Norma Lotzov is here tonight. You may have her say a few words. If we can get her to come on. Actually, Bernie Getz came to the Sunday meeting, which was an open meeting we have on Sunday. It was not the night before. Yeah, but you may have made the arrangement for him to go on, but he first wandered in to electioneer at the Sunday meeting. And the other thing I would say that I would add is that almost immediately the second plane hit, and we knew that it was not an accident, that it was a conspiracy. And I said, I read in the New York Times this morning, because I picked up the paper on the way down to the station. Actually, you called me around 6:30 or something. I got there on time for the 7 o'clock in the beginning of it. But I said, I noticed that they assassinated the head of the Northern Alliance in Afghanistan. And this sequence of events only makes sense if you're standing in the shoes of Osama bin Laden. Now, Paul had already done a lot of journalism on the previous attack on the World Trade. So, our little morning show was the first group to correctly identify the people who were our assailants. And I have a question for all the 9/11 truthers, okay? Which is, do you believe the CIA assassinated Massoud, the head of the Northern Alliance, as part of a CIA conspiracy? When the way I've always understood it, Al-Qaeda started out being a CIA franchise. They were working in the beginning to get rid of the Soviets from Afghanistan. And like a lot of contractors over the last 70 years, at a certain point they went rogue and they started doing their own thing. So I tend to believe it was not exactly the way the government says it was, but that the same people assassinated the leader of Afghanistan, the northern part, that attacked us. And I have an ongoing debate on my Facebook page with those people who say, no, you're covering up something. And the only response I can have is, what does that have to do with heroin in Afghanistan? What does it have to do with Ibogaine? When 9/11 happened, I said, this seems like a really big thing now, but 10 or 20 years from now, the fact that we have a cure for heroin will be a much bigger deal than what just happened to the World Trade Center. And right now, well, as soon as Bush was out, right, the whole thing began to wane. Because a lot of it was people really blame that guy for what happened. Because he had the memo on his desk, right? And since Bush is no longer president, the whole controversy is kind of like receded. But now, according to the Huffington Post, Ibogaine is the second most popular drug for legalization, right after marijuana. And people are not advocating it because they want to do it themselves. People believe Ibogaine should be legalized so that we can have a cure for heroin. We can have a cure for crystal meth and crack cocaine. And in the end, Ibogaine will be a much bigger deal. Because Ibogaine will go on now and it will expand. And it will resonate. And Ibogaine will take over the world and set it free. The people I'm working with in Afghanistan are secular, young people who were more with the guy who was assassinated, Masood. They are connected to the current government. The dominant Islamic group in that country are Sufi, like the people of Turkey. And, you know, they're influenced by Eastern philosophy. The first Sufi comes from Afghanistan. By the way, they treat the women a lot better than the Wahhabis, who are the people who are fighting it. We call it the Taliban. But I want to help out the good guys. If I could take a side without being violent, and I can lend a helping hand to the rational, secular, scientific people, I'll do it. I mean, look at what's happening in this country now. Well, we can't even cope with global warming because of a bunch of right-wing fundamentalists, religious nuts, who don't believe there's such a thing as evolution, even though I'm probably got some kind of drug-resistant flu right now because, you know, microorganisms evolve all the time, really fast, you know? So evolution is occurring in real time right now. And it's a problem that our drugs don't work. So, I got some other people who need to speak tonight. I'm going to let them up to speak, and we're going to have Immortal Technique up here to perform a bit. But the idea of opening a clinic in Afghanistan is aimed in New York City. I handed a copy of the Ibogaine flyer to Bill de Blasio soon after I came back to the city. And I'm in touch with this communications flag there named Monica Handley. But I can't get anywhere. I can't get any leverage to make them do anything about it. And the mayor could actually do quite a lot. He could, for instance, have the members of the New York congressional delegation ask the head of the DEA about it. Why don't we have this? Why is it Schedule 1? He can task the health department with supporting a clinical trial. There's a little clinical trial that's pending, but it isn't going anywhere. It's kind of, you know, like I think it said the other day, you know, there's a heroin emergency, right? The British are coming, the British are coming, the British are coming. Oh, look at the watch. It's 1783 already. It's time for your town. That's how much of an emergency there is. Because if there was an emergency, they'd break out the Ibogaine. So the idea is we can get a clinic going pretty fast. Maybe within a year, we can have a clinic going in Afghanistan. And then people will ask, well, if they can have it there, why don't we have it here? It was invented here. Remember the 1980s? When Japan was going to surpass the United States, it was a big national trauma that the Japanese were buying up Manhattan. It never actually happened. But people freaked out.
You gotta say Mars.
Didn't we beat those guys?
I'm not eating.
What happened to
I love St. Mars.
Day? What happened to Hiroshima? They're back. So, you know, we believe, you know, we're also going to go on to other places like Kathmandu and Dar es Salaam and sort of Ibogaine in a lot of countries. But this particular place is going to put pressure on the politicians in New York to do something. Now I'm going to invite a couple of other people up here. So there may be a segue. Would you like to come up and say a few words? Yeah. This is the guy who was actually there below the World Trade Center, was falling on him. Eric Williams. Woo!
Okay, good evening, folks. My name is Eric. I'll just keep my comments short. And I'm not going to get into a whole thing about I'm not going to get into a whole thing about 9/11, etc., because that was a traumatic event that I went and actually recorded and made into a CD program, not to make $1 million, but for my own sanity. I was recording that event for a number of different news outlets that day. But let me just say this, and that is, the man who just spoke here, Beal, is a guy that I've known since 1971, so that's like 40-something years now. And what's really interesting about what Beal has to say, so many people in the mainstream media especially, and in society would tend to blow off a guy like that because they would just simply disregard what he would have to say. Principally about alternative means of health and alternative means of people straightening out their lives. Whether it is medical marijuana, which Beal has been advocating for like well over 30 plus years, as long as I've known him, as a matter of fact, and it does work. The other thing is Ibogaine, which is a very controversial methodology of getting people who are afflicted with various addictions off of it. And there's a lot of controversy about that. A lot of the pharmaceutical companies don't want it out there because they can't make a buck off of it, in spite of the fact that it is at least something that the mainstream society, civil society, should really look at as a way of curing people who are sick, in addition to medical marijuana. And so that's why I'm here tonight, because in spite of all of the funny speeches and conspiracy theorists and so forth, there is something to be said here tonight, and that is looking at things in a different way. And I've always been attracted to people who march to the beat of a different drum, because I'm not interested, and never been interested in the cookie cutter type of middle-class person, black or white, in our country. But actually the people who really have something to say, which is different than what you hear on the regular TV and radio and so forth. And so that's why I'm here, just to give a little bit of support. I do think that both medical marijuana as well as Ibogaine are two things that should be looked at seriously and approached seriously in terms of an alternative of helping people. That's why I'm here, basically, to give my own support. And I don't people in the other room who don't want to be bored to death by people like me, and I can't blame them. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. As Adam Clayton Powell, the Harlem congressman, would say, I would keep my comments short. No offense to the ladies, but the Harlem preacher said, I'll keep it short, like a woman's skirt. Long enough to be respectable, short enough to be interesting. I think that